Reckoning day has come, and Tyron Stokes has made his announcement of what college he will be playing for next season. Mark Pope in Kentucky, they have to deal with another whiff hitting the Joe Kraft Center, but I don't think that Mark Pope in Kentucky really are the biggest whiffers in the end in this one. What's cooking? Welcome back into another edition of ESPN Louisville Plus. I'm Justin Silver. Of course, I got you covered for all things cards, cats, bourbon, and that bluegrass. Today, we got to talk about the conclusion, the wrapping up of the final finale. The fat lady can sing, I can sing when it comes to the end of Tyran Stokes and this god-awful recruiting saga that would not end. It would not die, and whether it be for own glory, for trying to milk every single cent and dollar that one man can get out of the program, or whether it's just a little bit more complex than that, Tyran Stokes has finally concluded one of the more dramatic cycles. And finally, I think we could all say that we're just tired of it and we're glad that it's over. If you're a Kentucky basketball fan, maybe you have a lot more feeling there than just tired and over it. And that may also be attributed to your college basketball head coach, who, frankly, we have a bigger discussion to talk about, or maybe we shouldn't. Maybe the discussion on Mark Pope should be wrapping up rather than having to be opening another semblance of Pandora's box. And what does this unending nightmare for the Wildcats have to, what else do you have to experience here in the next year? That being said, Kansas has landed the #1 high school recruit, Tyron Stokes, out of high school, out of the ranks, and out of the hands, the jaws of the Kentucky Wildcats. Mark Pope tried to put everything on this recruitment there at the end, trying to put all of his eggs in that one basket, but it was not to be. Tyron Stokes visited along with Robert Ray III when the BYU player decided, this ain't for me. Time to go home. Let me not do this again. Multiple players following suit after that, choosing to go. Donnie Freeman to St. John's. And just the latest of what happened with McBride. And that's another saga that is possibly going to be looking at what happened right here in this recruiting issue of another reason why Mark Pope maybe will not and really should not be the head coach of Kentucky after this next season concludes. That being said, I think we really need to just kind of shift right now, talking about Mark Pope. Should he be the head coach of Kentucky going forward? You've lost out on multiple guys. You lost out on Freeman. You lost out on Robert Ray III. You lost out on McBride potentially. We don't really know how that may end unfolding unless it's broken sunset. And now you lose out on Tyron Stokes. You're looking at a class that is frankly pathetic, that has no dream of even trying to even saying the word of that we want to compete for a national title. You're not competing for a national title. This ain't Kentucky basketball. This is not what Kentucky basketball should look like, and Mark Pope does not deserve to head this storied program any longer. Again, Tyron Stokes and this entire dramatic saga seemed to be locked up back in October. Let's go back in time and talk about the whole situation in October. Tyron Stokes, it got leaked out there that he was looking potentially to commit to the University of Kentucky. But could there be more than that with Stokes? I see a lot of people talking about him just trying to get all the money, demanding all the money. He's a bad kid with bad attitude and bad parents, or whatever you want to say out there. This has been floated out there for a very long time about Tyron Stokes. We had the breakdown of even Kansas. They weren't sure if he was going to end up landing at Kansas. Kansas takes everyone. Kansas will throw out the money gun while strippers are dancing in the middle of the court. Billy Self ain't worried about a bad attitude. Again, we look at our own programs here. Louisville, Kentucky have had plenty of players with bad attitude. You want to talk about a little Montrezl Harrell. He could be a little bit gruff out there. You want to talk about, Derek Character. Talk about Terrence Williams. Talk about Shane Mahan, guys who have been maybe not a clean track record. We want to look at the Kentucky side, and you don't really have to go very far. You can look at DeMarcus Cousins, one of the better players that Calipari had during his tenure. Sometimes the bad attitudes leads to a lot of success. While that team failed to make a Final Four, he's still one of the more beloved players of of Kentucky basketball history. So I'm sorry, spare me the argument or the even discussion of a bad attitude is not why we want to pursue a player. And the reason I bring that up is kind of going into my idea that I don't know if I believe that Mark Pope and Kentucky are the biggest whiffers in this situation. If we go back to that October date, and there's other evidence I had to line up with this, look at this. Now, settle with me here now. If you recall, one of the latest developments when it came to the Tyran Stokes recruiting and the reasons people thought that they were getting more and more excited that he was going to land with Kentucky outside of just that we're going to throw all the money we have at him and just beg him to come here. Well, Tyron Stokes puts out the infamous picture just recently. Him getting the 502 tattooed on his leg, while also having a Kentucky basketball game in the background of that said photo. People were thinking, people were talking, people were wondering. I think in the end, the reason this thing lasted as long as it did is, and this one's heartbreaking for me personally, because my personal opinion, my personal belief, the more people I talk to, the more this scenario gets broken down for me, the way that this developed from day one. I think Tyron Stokes, the number one high school recruit, the number one player out there, regardless of that he signed up for Nike or what have you, he ended up at Adidas school. He ended up at Kansas. He waited until it is freaking April 28th to commit to that Adidas school. Nike did not stop him from committing to Adidas school. The reason I say this, the reason I'm talking in circles around this, I think Tyron Stokes, Louisville kid, Louisville native, loves this program. His family's in love with the program. The family wanted him to go there. I think in the end, Tyron Stokes was hoping or wishing that he could go to the University of Louisville. Not saying whether he was really hoping to play for Pat Kelsey or not, but I think Tyron Stokes and his family wanted him to end up at the University of Louisville. Look at the last, whatever you want to call it, Blue's Clue, if you will, that Tyron Stokes put out there. The video, the picture of him getting 502 tatted on his leg, and with the video of Kentucky playing in the background, and you're going to tell me that that wasn't just a troll job? If he ends up at Kentucky, yeah, I believe it. But the fact that he didn't end up at Kentucky, the fact that he's not going to play with Mark Pope, the fact that he is now going to go play for Kansas and Bill Self, of all people, an Adidas school, tells me that in the end, he was hoping and he was wishing that he could end up at the University of Louisville, that he could be a Cardinal. Now, are there other reasons, other background issues of why I think that this is the case? Well, let's just say this. There has been an ever-growing sense or push from the fan base, from some of those people that were maybe not fully in power, but around power, to kind of say, hey, maybe let's go back and look at Tyron Stokes. Louisville, let's reconsider him. And what was the thing that was put out there? I remember making a reel from the Sunday Morning Hangover, where Phil Baker and Nick Kern discussed the potential bad attitude issues of Tyron Stokes. This is back in October. This is right before that aforementioned surprise commitment should have happened around his birthday. I think that was a reaction. I think that was frustration. I think that was probably some anger at the University of Louisville for cutting him off, to cutting him out, and not allowing him to really pursue the ability to play for the University of Louisville. Now, am I saying it's because he wants to play for Pat Kelsey and Pat Kelsey's going to get him there? He's the number one damn player in the nation. If he wanted to go anywhere, he could go play. He could go out there and play, make his bag, and go to the NBA and get drafted pretty high. I ain't worried about that at all. But if you're going to look at the whole situation, Pat Kelsey came out and basically made some odd comments. I don't want to say denigrating him. He didn't really say Tyron Stokes, but it was right after Tyron Stokes was supposed to be having conversations, maybe visiting with Louisville back then. And it was kind of a pretty cut and dry. This situation ain't good for you and it ain't good for the University of Louisville. And we are not going to pursue it. Now, what would be the reasons that it wouldn't be good for Louisville? Is it because you have a bad attitude, that you don't play well with others, that you don't work out with the University of Louisville because you may have a little bit of anger that you can frustrate your player, your teammates? even though you're dunking and cramming on people left and right. Yeah, Louisville basketball couldn't use that. You're going to tell me right now, if you look at the University of Louisville starting lineup of the players that they've brought in, that bring in a guy like Tyran Stokes wouldn't be the freaking cherry on top of that already massive, impressive roster that he's been able to put together in the portal. I'm not willing to buy it. I'm just not. Now, there are connections that have been made. There are discussions. Tyron Stokes has gone on a podcast recently where he kind of poked fun, makes a joke, tries to change the subject a little bit. There have been, without me getting too deep into it, conversations that have been had with different people around the city saying that he, maybe his family, those around him are connected with groups in the city of Louisville that could make things dangerous for him to continue and play at the University of Louisville. That if he went to the University of Louisville, maybe you had to have better security. Maybe you had to have more people around him through his day-to-day life. Maybe you have to have people around him to make sure that violence, acts are not being perpetrated against him or those around him. I don't know if I buy that. I don't know if I think that that's something that really, in the end, should keep you from getting a player. It's a college university, and this player is one of the most highly sought after recruits in the nation. So was the University of Louisville not willing to pony up and maybe make sure things are, more locked down security wise? I don't know. It would make more sense if he ended up going out to Oregon. But for some reason, Pat Kelsey knew at that moment that I am not going to go back for this kid. This is not a kid that I'm going to go back and give a second chance and talk to. They cut it off. They cut it dry there. In the end, I guess we'll find out by the end of the season how he turns out for Kansas. If this is a situation that maybe Louisville and Kentucky both won out by not having him. It's going to be hard to argue that for Kentucky, given the lack of roster construction and that nobody wants to just freaking play for Mark Pope. Nobody wants to play for him. He's an albatross at this point when it comes to recruiting, when it comes to the portal, and hell, when it comes to high school recruiting now. I'm sorry. I pity you all. I'm sorry, Kentucky fans. I wish that I could be mean and ugly, but that ain't me. As much as I would love to be the kid on the back of the semi truck, or not the semi truck, the Dodge Ram, urinating on the UK logo, that ain't me. It's just not. That's the situation as it stands right now. Kentucky misses out in the end. Mark Pope whiffs on Tyron Stokes, but in the end, if Tyron Stokes had the heart, had the desire to play for the University of Louisville, could be a number one get. Those don't come every day for UofL. They don't come from the University of Louisville. They don't come from Pat Kelsey, and you potentially could have missed out on one of the better players that UofL could have ever signed. And in the end, we don't know what that could have meant for that program and for everybody else here in the Bluegrass. That being said, neither program will have him. Tyron Stokes will be a Jayhawk. He'll compete for Bill Self, and I guess that'll be a team to keep an eye on throughout the rest of the season. Let me know your thoughts and opinions in the comment section down below. My personal opinion is I think it is a massive whiff for Mark Pope. They put everything they had into getting that player, but I think it's a bigger whiff for Pat Kelsey to not give it a chance or a second option to try to let that man stay home and play for the team that his family loves and adores. Let me know your thoughts and opinions in the comment section down below. If you haven't already, do me a solid favor, smash that freaking like button, hit that bell icon to stay notified for all of our latest videos, and of course, subscribe to the YouTube channel and join us here at ESPN Louisville Plus. I will see you all next time. Cards, Cats, Bourbon, and Bluegrass. We're going to need a lot more bourbon with Stokes out in Kansas.